How are you doing, green industry business leaders? This is episode number 25 of the Green Industry Profits Podcast, where we talk about how green industry companies can grow in a profitable way. In today's episode, we had a conversation with Sam Rankin, owner of ETCH Outdoor Living. We dive into how he was able to scale his company, his profit targets, service mix, growing your administrative team, and much more. And before we dive into this episode, just a quick note that this podcast is brought to you by Cycle CPA, a remote accounting firm that works specifically with green industry businesses. For more information, go to cyclecpa.com. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, everyone, super excited for this guest here. Actually, first met over at Brian Fullerton's event, Entrepreneur Academy Live here a couple months back, and thought the value in your talk was awesome stuff. Samuel, so Samuel Rankin with ETCH Outdoor Living here joins us, and looking forward to kind of learning more about your journey here.
Yeah,
And but yeah, thank you very much for joining
of
us here.
course. Of course. Great to chat with you. Obviously, you guys do an excellent job of being involved in the green industry and the community. And so I've seen your guys' stuff for golly, 2-3 years, it seems like. But you guys have exploded as well. And so happy to connect here and gotten to know you like we kind of talked about over the last couple of months, and something that I'm excited to just chat with you here.
Awesome stuff. And yeah, I guess for those that are not familiar with ETCH Outdoor Living, Samuel, do you mind kind of just giving us an overview of first off how you got into
For
the
sure.
industry and how you started the company as well?
Yeah. So we started like everybody, years old. I was pushing a lawnmower, was cutting the neighbor's lawn for $20, and was a much simpler time. The profit and loss statement had 4 accounts on it instead of 400. And was just doing it to make some cash. And I think that's one of the beauties of our industry is it is such low barrier to entry to get into mowing. But one of the exciting parts is there's other more specific topics and places of expertise where it is a little bit more challenging. And that's what we've done. We started in 2018, and humble $52,000 in revenue that first year. So I know what a lot of I don't know exactly what your listeners are. I'm sure we've got a range of companies that are 52 or maybe even smaller, to companies that would look at me and just squash me like a bug. And so there's that range, and that's I think one of the best parts about our space too. But we started in 2018, have had quick growth up until last year, and so crossed $4 million in 2023. 2024 inched up slightly to 4.5, which makes our budget this year of in the sevens look quite aggressive. But if we just would have hit our budget last year, the growth number isn't so aggressive. And so took a little bit of a step back last year for sure in terms of revenue, profitability. We just didn't have a fantastic year because we weren't as agile and nimble, and we didn't see what was coming as clearly as it happened. So we learned a lot. We're not perfect. We've quickly realized, but it also gave us time, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, here in a little bit, but gave us time to really look at every single line item, look at every single expense that's going through a credit card, and say, is that necessary to running a profitable business or not? And we found several $100 a month transactions, and it's like, we don't even use this anymore. Why the heck are we paying $400 a month? And so it's been some quick and sometimes crazy growth, which is good. But we also, have a lot of operational slop, just like a lot of people out there that we can definitely be doing better on.
Yeah. Oh, so as for the company, do you provide a mix of different services, or I guess, and also do you focus on more residential or commercial work?
Yeah, so we're a very good mix of services. So about 20% snow, give or take 35% maintenance and design build. And then the rest of that, about 7 to 10% in enhancements. And so a little bit low on the enhancement side. Want to see that tick up a little bit, but otherwise, I'm pretty happy that we're not super heavy on that design build and project based work. Our goal is to always to be in that 60-40, or maybe even a little bit better on the maintenance and snow than design build. So continuing to kind of push that envelope for those reoccurring services, which are ultimately more valuable someday down the line.
Okay, awesome. So you're looking for the recurring services to make up most of the revenue?
That is correct. And then on that 35% maintenance and snow, a good 80+% of it is commercial. We're primarily a commercial maintenance company. We do a lot of residential fertilizer and irrigation services, not much for residential mowing. So we're only mowing for people that are doing kind of our full like estate management type program. Doesn't have to be a large property, but they've got to be doing mowing, fertilization, weed control, irrigation if they have it, and landscape maintenance. We're not just going to go to service our lawn if we're just cutting the grass. And thought we'd have a lot of pushback on that, and nobody cared. Everybody's like, "Yep, I get it. We'll sign up for the fertilizer because we like your mowing, and we'll sign up for the beds." And so, been a good change. Made that change about 2 years ago, and just we wanted to make sure that if we were there and we were going to have our trucks and team in front of that home, that it was beautiful. That it wasn't just, they cut the grass, there's weeds all over the landscape beds type of look.
Yeah. No, awesome. And what do you feel is kind of the most profitable division? I would imagine. I mean, usually snow is typically, if you get snow,
Snow,
pretty good,
yeah,
right?
snow's good. We've got this year about 70% are seasonal, and so pretty heavily seasonal. But it is profitable. But at the same time, on the maintenance front, we're about 59.5% gross margin on maintenance. We're really high on maintenance, and it's an extremely profitable service for us compared to what most people see and kind of industry averages isn't that 45 to 50% on maintenance. So it's a place that we've continued to push because we have identified that it is so profitable. And it's something that we continue to find important over and over is going after those golden eggs, and it's the unsexy stuff we found of mowing, spreading fertilizer, killing weeds, pulling weeds, and landscape beds. Like it's very simple work, but it's not only profitable, but it's reoccurring, as we kind of talked about. We've done a really good job growing there. Design build about 42% gross margin. We've got some sub work in there, and so it brings that down. But all in all, we want to be in that company average of kind of that 52+% gross margin range, and we're right about there. I think we're like 50.5% right now, but continuing to push towards that 52 plus is the goal.
That's awesome. And for some of those recurring services, I know some companies struggle, and I think a lot of it is just a mindset in general too, just to get good profitability with those divisions. What do you feel ETCH Outdoor Living does well that enables you to do that? Is it the marketing and sales approach? Is it the efficiencies in the field, or pricing? I guess, what do you feel
Yeah,
is your
I
competitive
think
advantage?
I think both. Like everybody, we try not to sell on price, and it's inevitable. You have to be competitive, and within reason, and for the right properties, we will, entertain other pricing. If somebody says, "Hey, we're at this," it's like, okay, yeah, we can do it for that. Biggest thing is route density. You hear that on the residential side and on the commercial side, but the less time spending in front of a windshield, the better. The other thing, we use Aspire, great software. It's very expensive. It's similar in my opinion, Element, Jobber, you look at any of them and they're all about the same. The one thing though we realized is, we have a lot of drive time. We have to charge for that. And so one of the beauties of looking at our budgeted versus actual hours is it includes drive time. That drive time should be costed back to the job, because you wouldn't have that drive time if you didn't do that job. And so that's the way we interpret it on our end. And so it's important to see and to look at that. How long is it taking you to get there? If it's a way out of town property, then you need to be charging more for that site. But when we have such tight route density, we're charging for drive time as if we were driving to just that property, when in reality, we're driving 5 minutes after that property instead of 15 minutes. And so there's a little bit of efficiency gain there. But diving in, doing those time studies, having the data points to truly accurately propose jobs is imperative. It's something we do really well on the maintenance side. It's something we struggle a little bit on the design build side. We're not doing as many time studies and having the data to support pricing that I would like to see. And so we miss a little bit there for sure. But I think definitely getting better, and continuing to kind of grow in those areas.
Very nice. And how often, because getting the data is not an easy part, right? But then also analyzing it and then acting upon it, I guess, what do you kind of see as a good frequency, or I guess, because I know things get busy. How often are you looking at this data and then talking with the team in regards
Yeah.
to what you're seeing?
On the maintenance side, we're semi-annually. So we're pulling, all the turf square footages of the properties, and then by service, whether it's mowing or fertilizer. I don't specifically care if it's liquid or granular applications, because at the end of the day, we have to account for both. And in our programs, we don't tell the client the specific product they're going to be getting in the spring. They know it's pre-emergent. We would just keep it generic, but we could spray that pre-emergent or apply a granular. So we blend all of those times together. But then I have a very accurate, model of, I can spread or spray this many square feet per hour. And it allows me to then propose future jobs at that same rate. There is a level of it, with fertilization weed control. I know what we need to charge, and what we're able to charge is a much higher number. And so knowing your market, knowing what others are charging, seeing competitors' quotes, has allowed us to raise our price and be more profitable on the fertilization weed control. On the maintenance side, we're pricing it at what we need to price it at. The market doesn't bear any higher than what we need to.
Yeah.
And so it's just identifying where can you win, and where do you have to not lose, or maybe just
Yeah.
win, at that maybe 10% net mark. Fertilizer, you can be in the 20-25% net mark all day long, uh, pretty easily.
Very nice. No, awesome stuff. And I guess going back to when the company was that 52,000 revenue back in 2018, and your approach in regard to marketing, sales, just getting the customers in the door, building your name in the community, how has that evolved from then up until as you're thinking about your marketing and sales plan for 2025?
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot more expensive now than it was, I'll tell you that much. In marketing, you have one of two things, and you never seem to have both. You've got time or money. um, Back then, my marketing was in the capital of time. So I was going door to door. I had a little half page, 8.5. It was, what would it be? It was 8.5 by 11. So that'd be, 5.5 by 8.5, little half sheet of printer paper, cut them all in half. And I went door to door. I handed them out. People love a tailored message. And so my message was, hey, I'm a small owner operator. I can take care of you better than the big guys, because I'm going to be the one here doing the work. And so I sold that. I sold the crap out of that, actually. And people ate it up and loved it. And it's what allowed our business to grow. And to those people that I made those promises to, I still work directly with not almost all of them, but many of them still today. And we still have them as clients, because they know that I'm still behind it. And I still, reach out to them quite frequently to let them know that I'm keeping tabs on them. But we did spend a whole lot of money on marketing. I mean, maybe a couple $100. Now, our website advertising and marketing budget is probably 80,000. I think. I don't have my budget in front of me, but I would guess upwards of probably $80,000. And we're heavily invested in Google My Business and SEO and Google local service ads and those sort of things. We're doing a parade for the first time this year, which I'm super excited about. We're doing some of these more fun things. It's different. I think one of the things that holds true, especially for those smaller companies, is posting in, your community Facebook pages. Even as ETCH, where, I think we've got 5,000 followers on Instagram, which is a small following, but a lot of people in our local area. The biggest issue is obscurity. People just, frankly, no matter how well you think everybody knows that, you drive these well-wrapped blue trucks and everybody wears blue shirts, people don't know about you. People have no clue you even exist. Even the largest players, we've got a $30 million company in our market. And I would guess, even though they sponsor every single row at Wells Fargo Arena, which is our, 13,000 seat arena, I would guess most people don't even look at that, don't even know what that is. And so obscurity is the biggest problem, that people just don't know about us. And so that continues to ring true, and it just evolves on how you got to be doing it and attacking it.
Yeah. That's a great point because sometimes as a business owner, you're involved with it 24/7, and then you almost assume that other people, just because you post every week or whatever the frequency, you think other people or you think you're posting too much, right? Where it's
Yeah,
it's typically the opposite. So, um,
absolutely.
and I thought it was a great point as well, Sam, where you mentioned to really try to personalize and you know personalize that message when you talk to the customers, especially when you're just starting out. You have the
Yes.
time. Your time isn't worth as much, right? So doing that, the door knocking.
Y-
And I'm also curious because this is I feel like it happens with a lot of companies, right? Where you start off. Do you feel that you were pricing high enough back in 2018 in comparison to what you're charging now? I guess how has that evolved?
Yeah, I mean, smaller companies have a significant benefit in that they have little to no overhead. You're pricing to basically put food on your table. Um, at the same time as you grow, you have a significant level of overhead, but that overhead is divided over more hours, and so
Yeah.
it's fairly similar. I don't. One of my favorite things is people. Oh, I'm $70 an hour. I'm $80 an hour. What what I don't think people realize is $80 an hour is like 75% gross profit. That's not long term achievable. It just it's not. We're $58 an hour, I think, and that's about 50% gross margin. And so I just encourage people to to really um, look at the pricing. To everybody says know your numbers, but knowing your numbers and knowing how to actually use that data are two different things. And so um, I want to encourage people to like break down what is 50% gross margin. What does that look like for my business? The other big thing is you need to price how long it will take an employee, not how long it'll take you. I priced everything for how long it took me. I can mow 20 lawns in a day by myself, but I can never get that same production, frankly, out of a two-man crew because it was not what put food on their table. It was, but they were being paid hourly, so it didn't really matter to them. So there were just some changes that we had to adjust, and nothing wrong, but just different. People needed
Yeah.
to learn a little bit differently about what it took and what it takes every day. Real quick, back to that marketing comment though. One of my favorite things was anytime I was out mowing on Saturday, if I saw anybody out in the neighborhood that was within an earshot of where I was mowing, I'd go talk to them. I'd just say hi. I'd introduce myself. And I would just tell them, if you have any problems, here's my business card. If I'm making too much noise, if I leave some grass on the street, just feel free to call me and let me know. And it just went a long way with people. They never, there were a couple of Karens that did call, but it was almost always now they had my business card if they wanted service. It
Yeah.
wasn't actually about the fact that if I'm there too early, but it just gave me an excuse, an exchange of information with them to get in front of them, to introduce myself, and for them to know more about us. So those little touch points, those little personal touch points are enormous.
Yeah. No, that's it's crazy how when you're starting out, you're trying to master everything, right? The sales
Oh yeah.
aspect and pricing, financials and recruiting. So, but I know a big piece of this is also building a team, right? Which I think is what prevents a lot of people and some of the soft skills as well to be able to scale a company. How did you I guess if you don't mind, just kind of give me a little overview of how you did scale the company in regard to finding the right people, um, and even more currently, I'm sure trying to build up more supervisory level managerial people. Um, I guess what are your thoughts on that?
It's hard. It's not easy. I'm never gonna try to tell you it is because it's it's a daily grind. I mean, we have people that do things differently, not wrong, but differently, and it forces me to look in the mirror and realize that I made a mistake in the training. I really try to teach, to coach, and then to mentor people on a long term basis. You teach them how to do it first. They watch you do it. You coach them on them doing it, and then just long term, you're mentoring them on different ways we can think about things. If they're not seeing success, maybe it's because of X, Y, or Z. And so, continuing, to invest in the team members we have because regardless of the team member, regardless of the position, whether it's in the field, in the office, anywhere, it's always more expensive to hire a new person than it is to continue to invest in those that you have. The long-term cost of having a high turnover is incredibly expensive. There's reports that it's upwards of $2,800 per employee, in opportunity costs, as well as in, uniforms and softwares and that sort of stuff. And so when you look at it economically, I think it's really different, and it allows people to view that hiring decisions through a new light. We made all the mistakes, and that's how I've learned a ton. Between making the mistakes myself, between listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, and reading books, tried to just gather as much information as I could, and then went to a lot of industry events and picked the brains of those that are way smarter than me to really hone in on that. Because just like mowing a lawn, just like selling a job, hiring is a skill, and it's learned. People aren't innately good at hiring. I would say I'm still bad at hiring because I'm just looking for the best in people. And it's like, yeah, I should have looked at the 97 things that were telling me no instead of the 2 things that were telling me yes. So it's learned, and we've got somebody that does that for us now, thankfully, because she just looks through the BS and says, do you fit our 5 core values or not? And if you're not a resounding yes to all of those core values, then we're not gonna bring on a project. We're not just gonna bring somebody on to try to fix them. We want people with those 5 simple core values today that we can teach how to do, the technical skills. That's easier to teach than it is to teach somebody how to have a positive attitude. You either got that or you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that so that one individual that you had mentioned is handling it, is that their full-time role?
They work between that, between hiring, our onboarding process, and then also doing a lot of our accounts payable and data entry with, like, if we get an invoice for a subcontractor, she's inputting that into Aspire to job cost that against the job. And so
Sure.
not quite full-time yet.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, with the way our turnover was this year, it was probably more for full-time than it should have been.
Yeah.
But all in all, it should be, just a small portion of the role. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is how it is, especially as a company grows and scales. It's trying to, with the resources and the people that you have, trying to
Yeah.
make sure that everything gets done. So
I'm a big advocate on that. Like, I'm a big advocate of, you shouldn't hand off anything you haven't done.
yeah.
You shouldn't do everything, but you should have done everything. And so, I was the HR and hiring, and before, before we had an office, I was going to a coffee shop twice a week and would schedule group interviews at like 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. And so I'd have 4 or 5 people in at a time, and I would do a group interview, and it was good enough to see how they interacted with each other and how they answered a few questions. But just getting to know them, you could kind of identify if they were going to be a good fit or not. And so you don't have to have a fancy space, go in a back corner of a coffee shop and just have a good conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that point too as well, Sam, in regard to maybe not having to be a complete master in things like, for instance, like finance and accounting, because there's certain technical aspects of that you probably will never really want to know.
No,
But
no job.
it's at least having that basic understanding. And I think the best example that most companies probably know is how to perform the work on the job, right? And then now you're trying to step out of the field and making sure that they're doing at least maybe 80% of what you did. But it would have been very difficult to do that if you weren't there hands-on doing it, right? So think
Correct.
recruiting and sales. I think it just goes back to, when you were that $52,000 company back in 2018 and building a lot of those skills. And I guess any other things that you've felt has kind of helped you with all of those different departments, or is that just something that you kind of just learned through going through the different experiences?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just grinding. Like, it really is just grinding. And for those that are listening to this, or those that go to industry events, it's funny how many people will consume information and content, but won't actually act on it. Consuming it is 5%. Acting on it is 95%. But there's so many people that will actively listen while they're driving or do this or that, but won't actually do the things that are talked about. Like, yeah, oh, that's a good idea, I should do that, but then they never do. Instead, if we're really hitting it and saying that's a good idea, I'm going to send that in an email to myself quick so I've got it when I get back to my desk, and then I'm going to implement it, and just continue to on that one topic. And so that's one of the really big things is I've tried to always just be a doer. And lately, and kind of in the last maybe 12 to 18 months, I've become more of the idea generation person and maybe get things started. And we've got a team of implementers here that are good at that stuff. But really trying to focus and to push on doing the stuff, because otherwise you just continue to spin your wheels and suffer the same problems over and over and over. And so I love to see, and that's where, like, if people have questions and whatnot, I always just say, reach out on Instagram and I will help you with everything I can. Because I love to see people grow. I love to see people implement the hard things that are going to make their business more successful.
That's awesome, Samuel. And before we wrap up here, we're entering into a new year here in 2025. Any recommendations or other pieces of advice you have for people as we're planning for the year here?
Be nimble, be ready to solve problems. We were kind of talking before we went on air. I do a couple coaching sessions a week with people, and it's not a huge priority of my time. But for those that I do, and there's a reason I only do a couple people, is because I do have quite a few other obligations to a company and to friends and family. But be willing to be held accountable is one of the things. Don't be afraid to let your team call you out. As much as people want to say, oh, this person works for you, it should instead be, no, I work for them. It's my job to make their jobs easier and more successful, so then they can generate more income and more success themselves. And so I would invite people to open up to your team, to open up the books to your team, to show your team what you do and how you do it. It's not easy. It's running around with your pants down and just trying to hide some things probably. But what it does is it forces you to sharpen up. It forces you to clean up your books. It forces you to be more accurate. That's obviously where you guys come in, is you can give them a deliverable to show their team. The reports that you guys produce are some of the best, and it would allow people to have that open book style management, and so they can help. I had a mental shift a couple of years ago of, people aren't just going to go run out and do their own thing. Very few. We've had a couple of people do it, and great for them. We actually subcontract some work to them because they were trained the way that we want things done. But it 9 times out of 10, or probably closer to like 999 out of 1,000, people want that information so they can help grow. Our team is bought in. I gave them the 7.3 kind of budget this year, and our team is like, let's go 8. Let's do it. It's like, please. I would love that. I would love to pay out bigger bonuses, and I would love to pay out, I'd love to do cool things with that money that we can support our team or support community initiatives. And so being able to show that gets people more bought in, because they have more education on the why and the how and that sort of stuff. So be nimble, be open, and don't be afraid to be vulnerable.
Awesome stuff, Samuel. No, those are, I think, great points. Just being a leader in general. So, and what's the best way people can reach out if they have any questions?
Yeah, at ETCH Outdoor on Instagram, or my personal is Sam_Rankin. I'm on both of them, probably more than I should be per the screen time on my phone. But no, I if people have specific questions, I always invite. Don't hesitate to reach out. Don't hesitate to say hi. And if there's anything I could do for you, I would love to. Just have a good conversation, and I'm pretty blunt, so you might not like what I have to say, but I've probably experienced it, maybe not, but I probably have gone through something similar. So I've got a lot of wisdom for 28 years old, but no, it's been a good ride, and certainly wouldn't be here talking to you without our team.
Awesome stuff, Samuel. Well, I'm really looking forward to kind of following you guys along your journey, building an exciting company there. And thank you very much for joining us here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Appreciate you having me.